Hello and welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm your host, Zulfi, joined by Kyle Ramnarine, here to recap another week of Raptors basketball. Now, the trade deadline has passed and Toronto was active. So we have trades to discuss, roles to analyze, and talk some hoops in between. So with that being said, let's run it back. All right, let's take a look at last week of Raptors action. Starting things off in the Big Easy, Toronto visiting New Orleans, and unfortunately, the Raptors were just no match for the size and strength of the Pelicans. The Raps were out rebounded 51 to 38 and were a -7 on the offensive glass. And it didn't help that they committed 11 more turnovers in the Pels and allowed 30 points off those miscues. And oh yeah, in the midst of all that, Brandon Ingram went on a heater. He was already drilling shot after shot. Didn't matter what the defense was doing. But in the third quarter, he went ballistic, drilling I repeat, five straight three-pointers, part of a 41-point night for him. Toronto wasn't in it for most of the game, but if we're looking for silver linings, Grady Dick had his best game as a Raptor. The rookie dropped a career high and team high 22 points off the bench, drilling 4 of 8 triples, getting involved with bounce on out of bounds plays, and showing a high level of confidence, doing exactly what fans have wanted from him. Now, unfortunately, he was just one of few Raptors to have a great game, as this was practically over after the first quarter. 138 to 100 the final, the 6th biggest margin of defeat in Raptors history. Now, Toronto's 6-game road trip concluded in Charlotte, and in the very early goings, it looked good. They got out ahead to a 12-3 start, but things got a little dicey when the Raps stopped playing much defense. Going into the game, I said this matchup felt like a battle of two teams who don't stop opponents a whole lot, so it'll probably come down to which squad locks in first. Thankfully, it was the Raptors. Now, after letting Miles Bridges torch them for much of the game as he finished with a career-high 45 points, Toronto locked in and got some crucial stops down the stretch, holding Charlotte to just 20 points in the fourth quarter after giving up 36 and 37 in the first and third quarters. RJ Barrett led the team with 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists, while Jakob Poeltl chipped in a 12-12 double-double. Now, Dick had a quieter game than his career night prior, but he made most of his threes, and one of them gave the Raptors the lead in the fourth quarter, which eventually they kept and held on for a 123 to 117 win, the final, concluding the road trip with a 2-4 record. Now, that brought the action back to Scotiabank Arena, and it also signaled the return of longtime Raptor and champion Fred VanVleet with the Houston Rockets. Now, unfortunately, Freddie couldn't play. He was out with injury, but that took nothing away from an awesome moment when the Raptors honored him with a tribute, and he was given a massive standing ovation, showing love to the former Rap PG. Now, speaking of point guards, Toronto's new lead guard had one of his best games of the season. Emmanuel quickly scored 25 points, drilling 4 threes, and finished the night a game-high plus 21. He was masterfully carving the Rockets' speed with his floater game, working the pick and roll with Yak, or getting his looks from deep off motion. Things were looking good as the Raptors spent much of the first half up double digits, even extending their lead to as many as 22 points. However, the fourth quarter was a different story. The Raptors' defense buckled, and it buckled hard, as they were outscored 33-19 in the frame, and thanks to a Dylan Brooks 3, it saw their lead evaporate to just 1 point. Brook had 11 of his 20 points in the fourth quarter, but thankfully that was as close as the Rockets could get. They had a couple looks in the final seconds that honestly they should have hit, but lucky for Toronto they didn't. Now, aside from IQ, Yak logged another double-double, that's 3 in a row, and RJ dropped 21, and Scottie was just shy of a triple-double with 13, 10, and 8 assists as the Raptors hold off the Rockets and take a 107-104 win. Now that brings us to the final game of the week. The last time these two teams played in Toronto and Cleveland, the Raptors escaped with a win on New Year's Day. And spoiler alert, this game was not the same. Now, Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji made their debuts for the Toronto Raptors, but this team hasn't even had a chance to practice together, being a back-to-back, so it was hard to expect them to make an impact on much of the night. The Raptors kept it close early, but things fell apart in the second quarter. And honestly, the major bright spot was the play of Scottie Barnes. He was a monster in this game, and when he sat, things did not go well. Scottie finished with 24, 10, and 10, a triple-double, the fourth of his career, and the first Raptor to have 3 20-point triple-doubles in a single season. He's not third in franchise history, by the way, just behind Lowry and Siakam. And in the 13 minutes Barnes sat, the Raptors could only manage to score 8 points. He scored or assisted on 48 of the team's points, and if that doesn't summify the impact enough, he was the only player to be a positive plus minus on the Raptors in a blowout loss. That just shows how much he was doing out there. Safe to say, Scottie did just about everything he could, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough to beat the Red Hot Cavs as they lose 119 to 95. Now, to recap, the Raptors go 2-2 on the week and are 19-34 for the season, sitting in 12th place in the Eastern Conference. All right, so there is a lot to go over after this week of Raptors action, and we thought, why not bring somebody in to help us out to talk about everything? So we're joined by Cody Wiles from Raptors Republic. He's another freelance contributor like the two of us. And guys, I want to start by giving each of us a chance to react to these deals that happened. So for a quick recap, coming in, Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk from the Utah Jazz, and technically Justice Winslow and Mohamedou Gueye from the Raptors 905 on 10-day contracts. Going out in these deals were Otto Porter Jr., Kyra Lewis Jr., Dennis Schroeder, Thad Young, and I guess you can count Spencer Dinwiddie because he was traded here from the Brooklyn Nets but waived. So, Cody, I'll start with you. What do you think about these deals and kind of what you think this front office is doing?
Yeah, I'll start with the Ochai Agbaji and the Kelly Olynyk trade. I love it. You bring in Ochai Agbaji, who, lottery pick in 2022, and he's showing some defensive potential. The Raptors defense has not been great. They're actually last in the month of February in the entire NBA. So if he fits that 3-and-D model, right? If you can, I think they're going to challenge him to be a point of attack defender. That's something the Raptors have needed. And if he can hit his 3-pointers, he's, especially in the corners, he's over 42% from that area. Like that's kind of the mold that this Raptors team needs on the wing right now. And then of course, Toronto, Ontario native Kelly Olynyk back with the Raptors. I mean, just hearing all these press conferences and him talking about it, like he was listening to the Fan 590 on the radio as a kid, right? So, and he's the type of guy that fits exactly what Darko wants, right? Like, guys, as a front court guy, 4.5 assists in 20 minutes per game with the Jazz, that's elite stuff. He's one of the best playmakers in the entire NBA from that front court position, and he provides much needed center depth, spacing from that position. That's something the Raptors haven't had in quite a while. And little wrinkle, I like, maybe he can teach some Jonte Porter some things. We're some 905 guys. We've seen Jonte Porter. He's kind of like that similar build, right, to Kelly Olynyk. Both can shoot it. Porter's a sneaky passer. Olynyk has some passing chops. I like it. And then on the Dennis Schroeder trade, they're just trying to create flexibility, right? They're getting off of Dennis Schroeder's money for next year. Raptors legend Spencer Dinwiddie, unfortunately, won't be with the team any longer. But hey, I think that kind of not being able to find a suitor for maybe Bruce Brown and Chris Boucher kind of led into that, just to have the money off of the next year. But that one's clearly a salary dump. But I don't mind both trades. I love the Olynyk and Agbaji trade for sure, though.
Yeah, shout out Chuck Swirsky on the Fan 590 back in the day. That's our guy. But I find it interesting. I didn't really think about the Jonte Porter, Kelly Olynyk aspect, but Kelly Olynyk is clearly a vet in this league. He's over 30 now, and he's Captain Canada. So he's definitely going to be a guy who's going to be able to kind of help set a culture with these young guys, help them learn a little bit, and be a leader. And kind of going off of that, Kyle, I'm curious because when these deals happened, the Raptors technically got a bit younger, but they didn't go fully young. And for a team that's been touted as kind of restarting, rebuilding, and I think the optics of it is like you're trading away a draft pick to then get some of these guys. It's like, well, that doesn't sound like potentially a rebuild to some people. So I'm curious from your perspective, what did you kind of do in terms of making sense of this deal? And why do you think the front office went the way they did and kind of moving away from that draft pick and bringing in a guy like Kelly, who, again, leader, veteran, but he is older. He is over 30.
For me, like the draft pick too, I wasn't too concerned about it. Yeah, when you look at it just on paper, you're like, okay, they gave away a draft pick. What are they doing? But again, that draft pick best case scenario was going to be like 29th or something. But I think for us right now, we were talking about it last week. The Raptors kind of need a veteran sort of presence. They need a little bit of veteran leadership. So they get a guy like Kelly Olynyk, going back to Cody's point, like help guide Jonte Porter, help guide some of the 905 guys. Just the trade in general too. I enjoy it. I like, because I feel like when you get guys like this in, again, with them calling up the 905ers too, with Justice Winslow, that adds more of that veteran type of presence there to kind of help the younger dude. So it still does work in the flow of a rebuild. You still need older guys to help come and mentor the younger guys. So I think personally, this was a step in the right direction. I don't think we should be worrying about the one draft pick too much. Like, all right, it was gonna be 29, 30th, like nothing to cry over. For me, I was excited for those 2 seconds that Spencer Dinwiddie was a Raptor, because I was like, okay, we're getting another we lost Dennis Schroeder, we're getting a guard off the bench. I know everyone's just trashing on Dinwiddie, but I thought he could have been good for this team. I thought he could have been nice off the bench. I was one of those non-doubters of Dinwiddie. I was so hyped, and they waived him like 2 seconds later. So I don't know. What did you guys think if Dinwiddie stayed on the team? How do you think he would have fit with the team?
Kyle, you can't fool me. I know you. You were a Lakers fan, and you're just setting up the fact that Dinwiddie is on the Lakers. You can't fool me with this propaganda on Dinwiddie. Look, I already know where you're coming from. Yeah, look, Dinwiddie, he's a good backup point guard. His situation in Brooklyn clearly soured for whatever reason it was. It was reported that he didn't request a trade, but both sides were okay with it happening. But I think to Dinwiddie point of being waived, like Cody mentioned, part of it is flexibility. Well, the counter usually from most people was like, well, you could still do that next year. I think the point was they want to enter this season as flexible as possible, because there's this anticipation with the whole second apron and the new CBA things going on. A lot of these top spending teams are going to be hamstrung, and they're not going to have the options to kind of go and swoop in for some of these free agents that are coming up in the market. So the Raptors, again, Masai and Bobby Webster, this is their first time really going through a rebuild process with this team. So they want to give themselves as many advantages as possible. So going into this market and this free agency, if you can potentially swoop in and get some guys of talent, because these top tier teams can't spend as much, they're setting themselves up for that. And the other part that I find interesting, like you said, Cody, like they want Ochai to be a point of attack guy, even though that hasn't necessarily been something he's done in Utah. I think the underlying theme here is they want to give added responsibility to a lot of these guys. So Scottie Barnes, you're going to be going back to some of that point guard, that ball handling role with these bench units. Scottie plus 4 bench guys, I think is going to come back a lot. Is that going to look pretty? Probably not, but they want to add responsibility to some of these guys. So maybe that's part of why they didn't really care to have that backup point guard, because they're like, look, we want to identify guys within this club, young guys who are going to be here longer and things they can do. Ochai Agbaji, we want to make you a point of attack defender. This is even a way to be like, hey, RJ, we see you passing in transition. We see you making those moves. That's awesome. We want more of that. We want more offensive initiation out of a guy like RJ Barrett. So I think part of that as well is kind of adding responsibility to the guys that they have who they know are going to be part of this core. Whereas a Dinwiddie, great, he can still do stuff in this league, but he's not going to be somebody in the long-term future, which I think is a part of it. And I kind of want to take that to segue into the next part of this conversation. Like I mentioned a couple guys, we've all said a ton of names here. There's a lot of minutes to go around for a team looking to identify. I think Bobby Webster said that a lot post-trade deadline. We're trying to identify who's next, what's going to be kind of fitting in our timeline. But there's only so many minutes kind of to go around for a team. I'm kind of curious for you, Cody, like how do you think they should manage that? Is there a couple of players you think should be prioritized in that? Or like what's your outlook in terms of that situation?
Well, we saw it last night against Cleveland, the first kind of healthy with the new look roster. We saw what Darko's rotation looked like. You got the starters of Quickly, Scottie, RJ Barrett, Gary Trent Jr., and Yak. And then the first sub, Kelly Olynyk. We'll see if that continues. I don't know if that's just how it was. I don't know if it was a matchup thing, because his first minutes was alongside Jakob Poeltl. Of course, Cleveland, bigger forwards in the front court. And then you saw Bruce Brown Jr., Grady Dick, and Ochai Agbaji. That was the 9-man rotation. So, I love what Wara brings. I think there's potential for him to get squeezed out a little bit, though, because like you said, Zulfi, so many minutes to go around. And for me, he'd be like the 10th man. Like I'd prefer to see him over someone like a Jalen McDaniels. Chris Boucher is getting DNPs left and right. He doesn't look like to be in the future plans here, and nor should he. Like I want to see Agbaji gets more minutes. Grady Dick, since coming back from this stint, has been great. Since January 1st, he is shooting the lights out, guys. I have the number here. 45%. 19 of 42 from 3 since January 1st. He's been great. Like I want to see him in these closing lineups even at some point. So lots of minutes to go around. Want to see Wara get in there. Hey, biggest Javon Freeman Liberty guy ever. Wrote a big piece on him at Raptors Republic. As you mentioned, the point guard responsibilities. We don't have a backup point guard traditionally now. That's going to go, like you mentioned, to more Emmanuel Quickly, more Scottie Barnes. Darko and Bobby Webster have said as much. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to it's a retool, fellas, where whatever preconceived notion you had coming into the season, it's completely dead. It's a completely new team. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm glad to have a direction. I'm glad that the brand of basketball might not be the best, but we can sit here now and identify and see the growth from the players that are on the team.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that. Like, it's gonna be exciting to watch this team figure it out, and I think it will be. Like, yes, the games might get ugly at times. Like yesterday's game against Cleveland, the Raptors weren't really in it for a lot of that game, basically until the end. But it's one of those things where like you're starting to learn what is their 9-man rotation going to look like. How can they iterate these lineups? Because again, I think we're going to see a lot of different versions of these lineups. Like you said, Cody, they started with a Kelly Olynyk coming as the first sub off the bench, but there's going to be some lineups where I think he could provide a lot of value as a starter in terms of starting big, starting stronger, what he can do, bring a guy like Gary off the bench, ending with Kelly Olynyk as the 5 to space things out instead of Jakob Poeltl in there. I think there's a lot of versatility with this team now, and for the basketball nerds and the fans of this team, you get to really see and see that process kind of play out in real time with this team as they figure things out. And one of the biggest parts of that process is obviously going to be Scottie Barnes. He was named an injury reserve all-star, his first all-star selection, and he's only in year 3. He just came off his 4th career triple-double. I think he's the first Raptor now to have 3 20-point triple-doubles. And unfortunately, all of his triple doubles, as far as I know, have been in a loss. But that just speaks to how this team kind of like gets too reliant on him at times. It shows that yes, Scottie Barnes is awesome and he can do everything. But when you just leave it to him to do everything, it's really, really hard to win games because it's asking so much of a 22-year-old. Other guys have to step up and kind of be in the scenario. So I guess Kyle, I want to start with you. Scottie is an all-star. We know he's really good. But what do you want to see from him down the stretch in terms of developmentally and kind of the goals that you want to see him hit the rest of the way this season?
Personally, for me, I think Scottie's scoring right now, he's going to continue growing scoring, right? But I don't want to see that be the main focus from him. At least for me, I want to see his defensive capabilities be kind of the main thing going down the line, because again, right now we don't have a point of attack defender. Right now we need someone on the team to kind of step up defensively and be that guy. So if I know Scottie loves to play defense, he said it himself, so I feel like he can be that guy to guard the primary ball handler or the star player of the other team. Also, like, this is kind of like just a body language thing too. I feel like he needs to develop his body language better, because like after he gets a missed call or he doesn't get the foul, he's standing there complaining. I was watching when I was watching the Rockets game, standing there complaining, didn't get back on defense, they got an easy 3. Something, I know he's still 22, but he needs to work on handling his emotions better, just not showing it off on the court too much. And if you don't get the call, like, every now and then, you got to get back on defense. You can't just be like frustrated. He was still frustrated about it when he inbounded the ball right after that play. Like, you just got to move on. You got to keep the game flowing, because it is actually affecting like the score. It's not just an out of bounds play or something like that. They're scoring on this because you're worried about the call. So I feel like right now his scoring has developed amazingly from last season. His 3-point shot, the ability to take people in the post, so that will continue to develop. But for me, I want to see his defense become more of a focus, and just the body language be a huge thing. I don't know, what about you guys?
Hey, Cody, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging career highs in steals and blocks, and it's interesting you bring up the point of attack defender, because like you mentioned, we don't have one right now. But he's such a good weak side rim protector when he's playing off ball and able to come across and just erase shots, pinning them off the backboard. But he has shown like point of attack defensive responsibilities as well. Like in the Thunder game, he's guarding Shea. There's not many players in the league that can go from guarding Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in one possession, then Chet Holmgren the next. You know what I mean? So the defensive step this year has been right up there with the 3-point shooting, as like, just wow, like he's really developing. And as you mentioned, Zulfi, triple double, like this guy, you could see he's going to become like a triple double machine. Like, yeah, he's averaging just just over 8 rebounds and just under 6 assists. Like, those are awesome numbers. And the offense, like you said, he's going to get more on-ball creation, right? That's what we were saying coming into the season. It didn't necessarily feel like that at times with Dennis Schroeder and just whatnot, but I think he's going to get more of an opportunity now, and it's going to be really nice. And as I already mentioned, fun to see him just keep growing into this number 1 option, be this primary facilitator. And yeah, I think the primary scoring will be the last thing to come, but everything else is starting to build up here.
Yeah, like he's clearly on the right path, and he's accelerated far faster than any of us probably would have predicted. I think you guys covered the like on-court stuff really well. Something I wanted to touch on, and shout out S. Barahani. He brought this up, like, so last game after these trades happened, there was that moment pregame where they're having the starting lineup being introduced, and then usually Thad Young is the guy that kind of breaks them down and kind of like takes them out of the huddle. And they didn't have him there, obviously, because Thad Young was on the move. And so this team, for a quick second, looked at each other, being like, all right, well, who's going to be the guy to, set us up? And at one point, they all kind of just looked at Scottie. The reason being is everyone knows he's the face of the franchise. Everyone knows he's the guy who's going to be the leader of this core, whether it's him and you add Emmanuel quickly and RJ Barrett. Like, he's still number one in that kind of like pecking order. So he has to develop a bit of that leadership quality to him. And it doesn't mean he has to be the loudest guy out there. It just means that like he has to be the guy that these players can turn to. So for me, I really want to see him start taking the reins in terms of that leadership role. And I know that is a lot to ask for a 22-year-old, but like the reality is this team is his now. And you saw it against the Cavs. He was incredibly vocal. Darko even talked about it after the game that Scottie was just communicating the hell out the entire time on offense, on defense, and that's what I want to see more of. I think Scottie's starting to realize that like this team is going to go as far as I can take it because they're giving me all the opportunity to put my fingerprints over this squad. So for me, I want to see him kind of keep taking that that leadership role because we know all the on-court stuff. He's going to keep being awesome. He's going to keep kind of developing in that sense. But that leadership part is going to be such an important quality for this team that's trying to build a culture. Again, a guy like Kelly Olynyk and RJ Barrett, the Canadians, the reason why they're brought in is because they're going to be excited to be here. They're going to build a culture. But the biggest part of that, the make or break of it, is going to be how Scottie Barnes responds to all of it. And when he starts being vocal and when he starts taking over this team and kind of putting a stamp on it, I think that's going to go a long, long way for how this roster shapes up in the future and how the team succeeds with him as the leader. So I like it. I like how they're developing. I like how they're kind of putting things together. And Scottie Barnes, year 3, is already an all-star. And the sky's the limit with this guy. You guys both talked about it. Offensively, the creation is going to be kind of increasing. Defensively, he's going to be that weak side defender. Maybe he still does a bit of point of attack stuff. I think the Raptors are trying to find somebody to be that point of attack guy outside of Scottie Barnes so he can stick to his kind of stronger role as a help defender. But the recipe is there, and it's so exciting to see, and it's really good. So I think that covers the Scottie Barnes part of it. Another thing I wanted to touch on, since we're all 905 guys, we've all been to a ton of games, the 10-day contracts they signed in Justice Winslow and Mo G. I wanted to touch on that, starting with you, Cody, kind of like what your initial reactions to this were, and kind of what do you think they can kind of add to this roster in terms of those 2 final roster spots?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, had the 2 open roster spots. It was interesting because in the post-trade deadline presser, Bobby Webster mentioned they were going to scour the G League and even look overseas. So I didn't even necessarily think they were going to give 905 guys a chance, just the way Bobby Webster phrased it, but I couldn't be happier. I'll start with Justice Winslow. I mean, we all know Justice Winslow, right? I mean, just watching him in person close up, one of the most physical defenders in the league. He just throws his big 6'6", 225 frame around. And hey, over 16 points, over 7 rebounds. He's going to, like you mentioned earlier in this pod, he's a vet, right? He's going to provide some just of that knowledge that he's one of the older players on the team now. And it's going to be cool to see. I think he fits really well. He's been a Raptor his whole career without being a Raptor. The offensive creation is somewhat limited, as we know, but as I mentioned, they're the worst team in February on defense. They haven't been good all year. He's someone who can provide that. And Mo G is another guy who's going to really provide defense. I love him personally. Not many dudes on his level athletically. He stands out when you watch him. And he just flies all over. That 7'3" wingspan really shows up. He's 5th in the G League in blocks, and his instincts as a shot blocker, as a weak side rim protector, his timing, his weight, the way he gets vertical is crazy. And the 3-point shot is slowly starting to come along. Maybe I know you mentioned it on Twitter, Zulfi, maybe he gets a bit trigger happy at some points with the 3-point shot, but hey, if he can develop that 3-point shot and just be this crazy switchable defender who blocks shots and can knock down some shots, that's a real type of player. And what a run it's been for Gay on the team in Summer League, worked his way onto the 905, and now he earns a 10-day contract. I mean, that's like the American dream almost, right? So, it's great that the 905ers are getting a chance, and this internal growth that we've been talking about this whole podcast, it's bringing it back up with the 905. So I couldn't be happier for both of them.
Yeah, look, these guys, like when Bobby Webster and Masai talk about they want to get back to their developmental roots, like this is part of it. Bringing these guys up to work with the actual Raptors players and kind of showing them how the system works at a different level, I think is super important. And I like that you mentioned Moji in terms of the type of player he is. He reminds me so much of Chris Boucher. Just like
Exactly.
stylistically, he's super vertical. They are almost identical in terms of their like intangibles as well. Like they're both around 200 pounds. They're both 6'9", which you think they'd be taller. Just the way they play, 7-foot wingspans and above, and just focus on their athleticism in terms of how they play. Like even Chris kind of gets trigger happy sometimes, kind of gets away from the paint, but when they're in there, they're block machines. And they're in Moji's last like 14 games, 12 of them he had 3 or more blocks. Their last game he had 5 blocks. When he's locked in on that end in the paint, he can just swat away shots like it's nothing. And you mentioned it with Justice. He's just a physical beast. And I get he's a vet, he's older, but I do want to say 27 years old is kind of like in your prime in a sense, and he hasn't logged the type of wear and tear in terms of minutes as a lot of other guys because he's dealt with injuries. He's been out a lot. He just came off an ankle injury and he had surgery for last season, so he still has a lot of gas left in him if he can stay healthy, obviously being the biggest question mark. And I think something interesting that Justice provides is that, again, like we mentioned, the Raptors are looking for a point of attack defender, and maybe he's not the long-term solution for that, but if he can be that, like, again, that veteran and mentor to show Ochai a little bit of how to be that person, I think that is a great person to have around, at least to have a voice. And we've all met Justice. He is so vocal, he's so willing to talk to people, he has such a great personality, he constantly refers to himself as like a student of the game. So him kind of providing that tutelage to somebody like Ochai, kind of like you talked about, Cody, with like Kelly and Jonte, I think would be a very similar thing, and I think that'd be super impactful for this team. So Kyle, I guess I want to throw it to you, and I'm interested, how much do you think these guys actually get an opportunity? Do you think it's something where it's just garbage time, like yesterday Justice I believe got in at the end there, or do you think it's something that they should kind of see more visibility on this team? Do you think they should be given more of an opportunity within the rotation? What's your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think they should be definitely getting a chance at this rotation. Like they're only on 10 days. So what's the worst that can happen if you let these guys have a chance, right? Like for me personally, Moji, I like his game a little bit better than Chris Boucher's at the point right now. I feel like he could his ceiling's a little bit higher right now. We've seen what we can from Chris Boucher. He's a defensive force, and with Justice himself, so I'm gonna call Pat Bev because the Raptors got a dog, bro. That man is he is the dog of the team right now. I've seen him literally just throw people around on the 905. He can kind of be the Raptors enforcer a little bit. Like every team needs an enforcer, like every team kind of has that guy, and I've seen Justice just kind of do his thing, enforce in games and intimidate people. Like he doesn't have to be scoring, he doesn't have to be going crazy, but that alone I think is worth minutes on the team. That alone, hustling for the loose balls, getting down and dirty, playing aggressive, tiring defenders out. All of that is so important. What both of these guys bring to the team is versatility, their defense. Moji, if he does, like you guys are saying, if he does get that 3-point shot going, he could probably be one of the top 5 players on this team. His defense alone, his ability to contest shots. I'm high on Moji. I know you guys think I might be hyping this guy up too much, but I've seen this guy go crazy. I've seen this guy go crazy. I got scared of Justice Winslow sitting by the 905 game, just seeing how he was throwing the defenders around. I was like, this guy is D's, but I think he can do it. I think the minutes they need to get a chance, because honestly, like, we're in a rebuilding phase. What's the worst that can happen? They actually show up for us. They actually provide good minutes, So I feel like in these next few games, we'll see what they can do. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with this move, and I do think they do get a chance.
Yeah, I like again, it's one of those things where if the Raptors want to get back to their roots instead of developing guys, they have to put their money where their mouth is, and doing things like this really does show that. And maybe it's just them kind of like, again, with Justice, the conversation was like, maybe they're just giving Justice a bonus, putting him up there, giving him some money, kind of saying thank you for what you did. But I really hope these guys do get an opportunity. And we've all like talked about it. Like Justice's impact goes well beyond just the numbers of it all, but even the numbers are so impressive. Like Cody, you already mentioned his counting stats. I was looking at it like yesterday, just his like net rating and his impact. The 905 are like 20 plus points better when he's on the court versus when he's off. Their defense is around 18 points better when he's on. Like this guy just impacts the game in so many different ways. He's talked about it. He has this mindset where he sees basketball as like an infinite amount of like winning plays. He learned that from Eric Spoelstra in the Heat. He's just such a quality character guy to have around your team, which also clearly seems to be a theme for the Raptors, looking for character guys, bringing in Kelly, bringing in Ochai. So I think that's going to be super important. But the reality is these guys are on 10 days. And I think part of it is the Raptors are going to be trying to fill those roster spots by looking at as many things as possible. Cody, you mentioned it. Bobby Webster said they might even look overseas. They might look at current free agents. So kind kind of on that vein, there's two other guys in the 905 that I think are worth talking about and mentioning. And one guy specifically, Cody, you are a big fan of, in Javon Freeman Liberty. So I kind of want to hear from you. Talk about JFL and talk about like why you think he might have a shot with this Raptors team.
Yeah, so obviously after the Dennis Schroeder trade, we don't have a traditional backup point guard, right? And Javon Freeman Liberty, he's not necessarily a pure point. He's more of a combo guard, but we talk about this point of attack defense. Javon Freeman literally can provide that for sure. He hounds dudes at the point of attack, and the offensive side is really starting to come along. Like, he's their leading scorer and their best point of attack defender. Like, he is really starting to come along with a lot of the things of his game. And credit to Eric Khoury and the 905 staff for bringing him up to speed. The 3-point shot is coming along as well. That started off a bit rocky of the year, but he's hitting them like they're nothing now, and he's so quick. He's a walking paint touch. That's what I like to call him. And the way he's able to absorb contact and finish through it at the rim is really special. And I want to see him get a chance. He hasn't gotten much run quite yet. It's going to be tough because we're bringing up all these guys, and we've mentioned it already. The minute squeeze is real. Like, someone like we all love, Jonte Porter, Kelly Olynyk's kind of taken that spot now, right? So it's like everyone's going to be squeezed for minutes, especially like I want to see Moji get a chance. I want to see Justice Winslow get a chance. I want to see Freeman Liberty get more chances. It's just the squeeze is on, fellas, and it's going to be interesting to see the mentality that Darko has in incorporating everything. And I mean, this year's all about development, right? Wins and lessons, I believe, is the term that Raptors Republic Louis Zatzman has coined. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing I like about JFL, and you kind of talked about it, is that his physicality. He's listed at 6'3", and it's funny, when I stood next to him in person, he doesn't feel like he's 6'3". He feels a bit shorter, but then when you see him play, he plays bigger than that. Like, we all saw his dunk a couple of weeks ago. Like, he just runs through people. He has insane physicality. And my biggest thing with him earlier on was just like his scoring was there, but the efficiency on the volume wasn't kind of like the best in my opinion. But he's really fixed a lot of that. Like you said, he's really come along with that. He's a lot more efficient now, taking smarter shots. And there's been games where like they're keying in on him. They're sending doubles, going quick on him, and he's not just throwing up shots. He's making the right reads. He's letting other guys get involved. And I think that's an important guy to have. I'm kind of curious, Kyle, like, so there's two ways the Raptors can go about filling these final roster spots. And I kind of like the second approach a little better that I'll explain in a second. Number one is like they bring in these two guys, Justice and Moji. They kind of keep them there because obviously they need to fill these roster spots, right, at the end. And then they can sign him to one more 10-day, but then eventually just sign him for the rest of the season, call it a day, and have those roster spots filled. Maybe they get a chance if somebody gets injured, but they'll probably just sit there, kind of develop. Or the other way is they kind of, after these 10 days are over, they then switch guys in like Marquise and Javon Freeman Liberty. Look at them instead at the end of this roster. Because like you said, Cody, they don't have a backup point guard. So they might just kind of be trying to explore as many options as they can, because maybe they try those guys on bringing them up on their two-way deals. And then after that, they're like, okay, you know what? Let's take a look at some other guys. Let's take a look at the buyout market. Let's take a look at somebody overseas and give them a 10-day and something like that. There's two ways to go about it. There's more like, you have guys in your system internally, you kind of stick there, call it a day, or you really just spend the rest of the season like picking and choosing and looking through as much as you can, kind of just trying to, again, get back to his developmental roots a little bit. I'm kind of curious, Kyle, from your perspective, which one do you think makes more sense?
I feel like honestly the route of the 10 days, like give these guys as long as they give them a chance, because there's no point in burning them up 10 days, not giving them a chance, not seeing what they're able to do, and then just cut them and get other guys, so as long as we're going off they'll get some minutes, we get to see them play, get to see how they do it. I don't mind them bringing up JFL or Marquise and then maybe looking overseas or bringing up someone from the free agency for 10 days. Like, I like that route because, again, it's experimenting with a lot of different things. We're looking at different guards, different backup bigs, different forwards, whoever, like point of attack defenders, guys who are strictly defenders. Like, the options are out there. I love that too. Right now too, I'm one of the biggest voices for Javon to get up. He should be on this main roster. He is that talented. He should be on this team. I was there. I was that white speck on the press box to see when he threw down that dunk. I almost flew back in my chair when he threw that down. He's just incredible. I've seen this guy lead the offense in the clutch too, and he's been calm. He's been composed. So he's been in those tough scenarios, and I feel like he can bring something truly great to this team. But if we're looking at overseas and we're looking at other guys, Marquise too. Marquise has been great for the 905 too. So all these guys truly bring something different to the team, and I do like what you're saying, kind of experimenting with different players, because this doesn't have to be set finalized right now. We're just still going through the motion of the team, and honestly, I just like that better. I like going through kind of a rotation of different free or like players, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I think like experimenting, part of it is just giving yourself as many options as possible and seeing what's out there. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see kind of what this team does. I guess the last thing we can touch on is just the rest of the season, kind of your outlook on it and what you hope to see from this team. Do you feel good, excited, nervous, kind of like just touching base with each other? So Cody, what are you thinking with this team in terms of like, you kind of know most of the roster now, you know a bit of what it's going to look like. Now, what are you hoping to get out of that the rest of the way?
I want one thing and one thing only: a pizza party, man.
Yeah.
They got close against Cleveland. Well, they didn't get close, but they had the two wins in a row. They haven't done that very many times this year either. But yeah, I mean, it's just all about development, right? We talked at nauseum about seeing Scottie grow, seeing Grady grow, and seeing all these young guys. That's basically all I want to see. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. I know there's a big talk on Twitter about convey or keep. Which team are you for the Raptors pick? And Bobby Webster said it himself at the post-trade deadline presser. If we end up getting the top 6 pick, cool. If we don't, cool. It's something that the season's a wash, right? Like, we all know this. It's just about internal development, and just they have a direction. The brand of basketball might not be the prettiest, and at times you're going to see it drag and offensive possessions be not the best and getting lit up defensively. But hey, it's the first step into the long process. We got an all-star, man. We got an all-star. So continue to build around them. They're going to have a lot of cap space in the summer. We'll see what happens there as well. So wins and lessons, baby. Wins and lessons.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The thing I really do want to see is that this core 3 of Scottie, RJ, and IQ, I really want to kind of see them build that chemistry together and develop into this trio. I know Scottie's the number 1. He's the anchor of this, and he's the best player. By no means am I disagreeing with that. I think for me, though, it's like, you know how hard it is for one guy to kind of lead a team to a championship. It doesn't really happen, quite honestly. Even like your best players in the world, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, all these guys need other pieces with them to kind of make it happen. So I want this trio to really develop together and really develop into their roles. If Emmanuel quickly is that lead guard, I really want to see this team kind of figure out what's the best way for him to be that lead guard. Is it just working pick and roll as much as possible? Is it him coming off like motion shooting and that is? How is he setting up others then? Like, what's the best way to get him to be that guy who can facilitate? Scottie Barnes, where does he fit in that? RJ Barrett, he's developed immensely with his Raptors team. His fit is so much better. He's this downhill just puncher. So how do you get these 3 guys building as much chemistry as possible, where it's like to the point where they can just give each other a nod and they know what they mean, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So building that communication, that like chemistry with each other, I think is going to be so important, because like this team is banking on these 3 guys now. They've invested into them. They're building around these 3 guys. So that's kind of what I want the rest of the season to look like. How do these 3 guys, when they're on the floor, communicate together? How do they kind of like facilitate and get things going? And I think that's going to be super important for, and that's what I'm really excited for. Again, we've already given them a nickname. It's the barbecue era. We might not have a pizza party, but we have a barbecue. So hopefully they can kind of make that into something, and I think they will. I think with time, they're around the same age. I think it's very exciting to kind of see how these guys kind of tinker and build that chemistry together. Kyle, what do you think?
For me, like, honestly, since the beginning of the season, I wanted them to take the direction of rebuilding, and now they did. I can't complain. I'm not like the Raptors Twitter spaces where they want to win now, apparently. But I love it. I'm so excited for the future and the development of this team. Even if we lose, okay, we lost. But if we win, we win. Like, all of it is just about developing these players. My expectations are right there. Just develop the players. I don't expect them to win bare games. I don't expect them to really go out there and do anything crazy. I just want to see guys like Grady Dick develop, which he has been doing. Our core of barbecue develop. It's just, for me, I'm just looking at this with a huge optimism like type of view. Like, I don't want them to go and have a 50-win season. Like, no one was expecting that. And if we did, like, I don't know what you guys were expecting over there on Twitter, because we need to grow these guys. And for me, just seeing them go out there and flow and figure each other out and build that chemistry, it's coming along, and we already, like Cody already said, we already have an all-star. We have the base foundation there, so we just have to work in developing a core, building a culture, and everything like that. So, and we're on the right track. So if that doesn't get you excited for the future of this team, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it off, Kyle. That pretty much does it for us. But before we go, quick fire round: do we get a pizza party before the season's over? Cody, what do you think?
Yep, we're getting it. I'm putting the flag down. I think they'll do it. I think they'll do it at some point. Hey, we got close. We got close. Got 2 in a row. So we just ran into a hot Cleveland team, man. I think they were 18 of the last 19 or something like that. It'll happen. It'll happen. I'm sure.
And Kyle, what do you think?
We're getting that, bro. I'm fiending for the Raptors to stop starving. So like they need to get this pizza party and start eating, bro. They'll get it. They'll get it. I believe.
All right, let me make it 3 for 3 for 3 wins. Like, we're getting the pizza party. Stamp it. We've said it here. Well, that does it for us talking about the Raptors after this week of action. We're gonna move on to our next segment. Thanks, guys.
All right, so for this week's power rankings, I know there's been a lot of movement within the teams, but this is what I have for this week. Number 1, Scottie Barnes. 2, RJ Barrett. 3, Emmanuel Quickly. 4, Jakob Poeltl. 5, Gary Trent Jr. 6, Grady Dick. 7, Bruce Brown. 8, Jordan Nwora. 9, Jonte Porter. 10, Chris Boucher. 11, Kelly Olynyk. 12, Ochai Agbaji. 13, Jalen McDaniels. 14, Mohamedou Gay. 15, Justice Winslow. 6, Garrett Temple.
I guess what I want to kind of come at you with first is kind of talk about somebody is Grady Dick. He jumped up from the 10th spot to the 6th. Now, some of that is the movement in terms of guys joining and kind of going away from the roster, but he's also been on fire, not just as of late, but since the month of January. I believe he is shooting around 45% from 3. He has really looked comfortable. The confidence is coming along. And I think an interesting wrinkle in that is the fact that Darko is kind of running more stuff for him. But I want to know from you why you're willing to see Grady Dick bump up so much higher.
For me, at least, just because of, like you said, the development he's made. It's been great compared to the other guys like Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora. At least this week, they haven't been doing as much as Grady. I've seen Grady score 22 points, 10 plus points. You know, he's been doing his thing. He's been moving around, moving off ball. Quick hands when I was watching the Rockets game too. Quick hands on defense, poking the ball loose. You know, finding his spots and not being afraid to take that shot and kind of like doing his thing. And it's been great to see from Grady, and it just shows glimpses of what he can be truly. Put on a bit more size and weight, and he could really be a contributing member of this team, like if he isn't already. And you know, it's been crazy to see, because at the beginning, like, he was at the bottom of this power rankings, but now he's moved his way on up, and his 3-point shot is there. And if it can continue to grow from this, it's gonna be really impressive.
Yeah, look, I'm going to start the conversation now. And I think some people have already kind of thought about it a little bit, but like, it's getting to the point. We're in the second half of the season. It's a bit of a wash. We know it's not going to be to try to make the play-in or the playoffs, that's for sure. Maybe it's time we start seeing Grady with this starting lineup a little bit. Look, Gary Trent Jr. has been solid. He's obviously been great catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but we know he's very limited in terms of what he can do outside of that. He's not really providing much else. Defensively, he still probably wreaks a bit more havoc than Grady does to this point. But like you said, Grady's getting a lot better. He puts his body on the line. And if we're going for wins and lessons mode and development, it could be something worth considering, because yeah, Gary's an unrestricted free agent, and hell, we don't even know if he's part of the plan or they're trying to retain him. Bobby Webster said it's TBD when it comes to Gary Trent Jr., which is a pretty transparent way to talk about a player that they're not even sure what the plan is with. So maybe Grady Dick should see some time with that starting lineup, because you know they're going to want him there in the future, especially if he's shooting like that and he has that quick trigger and he has the confidence to kind of just play with the ball a bit more. You saw it against the Cavs. He had that up and under when he attacked the closeout, and I was like, what the heck did we just see from Grady? He's just showing like he has athleticism. Yep. He has a 6'8" frame. He's tall. He's getting stronger, and the most important thing is he's getting more confident. So I think that's super important, and I think he should maybe get some looks with the starting lineup. What do you think?
Yep. I agree, honestly, too. Like, okay, like the one scary thing is, though, is Gary Trent, can he provide off the bench? Because when he was coming off the bench earlier, he was having those struggles. But honestly, I think Grady Dick has shown enough to kind of, again, this team is all about learning, developing the young core. So giving him those minutes with the starting lineup too, like, what's the worst that can happen? You know, what if we haven't, like, what can get more negative from here? So I think if he works with these guys, he'll grow a chemistry with them. Like, Scottie will learn more about him. Quickly will learn more about him. RJ will learn more about him. They all flow together, because I could see this be kind of being the core 4 of the future. You know, say if Gary Trent doesn't resign with the team in the offseason this year and he decides to walk, this will be a going forward. I really want Grady inserted into the starting lineup because, again, if he continues to grow, I would love to see him with these guys.
Fair. And I guess to kind of switch in a different direction, not so positive, let's say a bit more negative. I want to have a conversation around Bruce Brown. You haven't moved him at all, but I could say there's maybe a bit of a justification that Kelly Olynyk in his last game might have been more impactful than look, Bruce Brown is a really talented and a really good player, but we said this last time as well. He will look very different around Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic than he will with these guys. And some of the moments he's had with his Raptors team has been puzzling. So now some of that probably has to do with the fact that he didn't know if he was going to stay. What's his like mentality at? And now that he knows he's going to be here, maybe some of that turns around. But just like his fit hasn't really been as seamless as maybe most people thought. At least that's what I think. He's just like finding himself in the offense, trying to find out where to connect. Now he may be the backup point guard in many regards because we don't have one on this team anymore. Him and Scottie might share some of those duties. But even defensively, there's times where he can get a little lost out there. Now I'm just curious, like, are you concerned at all about Bruce Brown? Because I feel like I am a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
I am too. Like I watched that live. I watched him miss that layup live. Yeah. Okay.
He made fun of it himself. He had some fun with it after on Instagram. So at least he was a good sport about it.
He did own up to it. I did see that Will Lou reaction live to him missing the layup. But yo, honestly, you're not a madman for saying he should be lower and Olynyk should be higher. I looked at it. Olynyk had 3 steals in that one game. So his impact this week has been absolutely abysmal. It's been crazy. The only reason why I don't have him lower is just because Kelly Olynyk and Oche, they played only only one game actually for the team. So it was hard for me to kind of move them up anything higher than where they are now. Obviously, they will be higher going forward too. Like Kelly Olynyk, he's going to be a big part of this team going forward. He fits in what we need so badly. But Bruce Brown right now, I don't know what exactly is happening out there. There are games where he's scoring 2 points, he's having no points, he's having 5 points. It's for a guy that can contribute to contending teams. Like, at least we got to see something here to get your value up to trade you to a contending team. You know, you can't just be coming out here and I don't know if he doesn't know where he fits on this team. I don't know if he's struggling to get his feet under him. I don't know if he needs to be in a bigger role, like with the starters type of scenario. But whatever it is, like, he's not just out there getting cardio at the moment right now. He's running.
Like I find it interesting because like for me a lot of it is like the shot selection, kind of just the decision making. So a lot of the decisions he's making doesn't really feel like the guy that he's touted to be, like a plug and play, put him in any system and he can be impactful. And I don't doubt that he can. It's just that lately it hasn't really looked like it, and I don't know what's behind that. Again, a lot of getting downhill, putting the blinders on, taking some really tough shots that like maybe he can pass out of and make other decisions with. So that part has been really kind of like puzzling to me. And maybe again, if he's into that backup point guard role, he has more of a concrete idea of how he's supposed to fit in this offense, and that changes that. But for now, it's going to be a little puzzling. Another thing I'm curious about is like the end of bench guys, like what the movement there is going to look like. Because there's guys like Jalen McDaniels, there's Jordan Wara, we already mentioned. There is who am I thinking of? Where did the name go? Chris Boucher. That's what I was thinking of. Chris Boucher, who's obviously a vet on the team, you know he can provide, who's basically out of the rotation now.
Yeah.
And then you just bring in these 2 10 days guy in Moji and Justice Winslow. So I guess out of those 5 guys, who do you really want to see get some time next? It's hard because you're going to have like a 9-man rotation. I didn't even mention Jonte Porter. He's going to be in the mix, but then you have Kelly Olynyk now probably taking a lot of his backup center minutes. So that takes him bumping down. So let's say 6 guys. Out of those 6 guys, who do you really want to see get, I guess, a bit more of an opportunity or find ways into the rotation as like the 10th or 11th guy?
I know we kind of touched on it a little bit in our discussion with Cody. Like, I want to see Moji get the time, you know, because again, he's not there for a long time. He has to showcase his skills, and I really feel like he can do something great on this team. Like, him and Chris Boucher are kind of the same like archetype of player, you know, but I feel like right now his ceiling is a little bit higher than Chris Boucher. I've seen him finish games with 3 blocks, 5 blocks, energizing the team on the defensive end too. And like, once he gets that 3-point shot going, like, he can be something big for this team. So at least give him some time to shine, because again, we're not going out there to win a chip. We're not going out there to make the playoffs. We're going to develop guys, test lineups, test like just experiment. So I feel like out of all these guys, because a lot of these guys right now, they've had a lot of NBA minutes, but this was something that would benefit Moji a lot. So for me personally, I think Darko should kind of bring him, give him like at least maybe 10 plus minutes a game, 10 to 15, something, nothing too crazy, but he's only here for 10 days. So again, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, the Moji thing is interesting, and like I've said it, like again said in the conversation with Cody, that I see him as like a Chris Boucher light in many regards. And hey, Chris Boucher is over 30. Chris Boucher is an unrestricted free agent coming up, and he definitely doesn't seem like he's part of the plans because they're just not playing him. So maybe Emoji can be that cheaper, cost-controlled replacement for him, providing a lot of it. And again, much younger. Emoji is 25 years old. But before this, I might have said Jordan Wara, but with Grady Dick's development and how he's showing out, I think like he could be kind of like in that rotation like right away and contributing more, which he already is. Grady Dick is finally getting those minutes, so I don't really see where Jordan Wara fits in this. I think it is worth maybe getting a look at it. The big thing with him is, can he be at least a contributing factor defensively? And if he can't, the 3-point shooting is great, but then we already have a guy like Grady Dick who's coming along in that regard, and he's starting to show that he can do some defensive work as well. So I find it interesting kind of like in that sense there. So I wouldn't go with Jordan Wara now. I probably, like, again, we talked about this, but Justice Winslow to me is a guy that I think people are like saying he's an older guy, he's a vet. Why would you bring him up? He's not that young anymore. You're trying to look at young developing guys. I don't think Justice Winslow is as old as people are putting him out to be. He's 27 years old. I get it. He's played less than 400 games in the NBA. He's been riddled with injuries, and now if he can be healthy, which he has shown in the 905 that he can, he is basically in the prime of his career. At 27 years old. That's 3 years before 30. He's basically where he should be physically in terms of his maturation. He is a very smart player, and he has a lot to offer defensively. And like Cody mentioned, this team has been the worst in the league defensively in the month of February. They could use something like that out there. And his role offensively doesn't have to be all that great. He is a connector. To me, he's very similar in Bruce Brown in that sense, what he can do offensively. But if he provides the defense that he has with the 905 as an anchor, as a point of attack guy that the team is looking for, and on the wings and perimeters, like, you're basically looking to replace OG Anunoby. And that's going to be really hard to find. So you have a young guy in Ochai you can try that with. But then you have a guy like Injustice that you could get it with now, who can show Ochai a bit of the ropes and how he does. So I think like a guy like Justice for me would be a person to really, really take a look at here and give him an opportunity. And I know it's hard. Both these guys may not even get any opportunity to play. This may have been just a point by the Raptors front office to just fill out their roster and just be nice to the 905 guys in doing that and kind of like give them a bonus out of it. So maybe they don't get an opportunity, but like you said, and like we said in our previous conversation, I really think they should. But that, I guess that does it for me in terms of thoughts on the power rankings. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, Kyle.
No, nothing really. It just kind of like, it's gonna be interesting to see. This roster is so different from when we first started too. So many movement. We don't. Siakam's gone. OG's gone. Schroeder's gone. Like, it's gonna be interesting to see how this team does going forward and what players they bring up, and if they're gonna really experiment, like you mentioned with our talk with Cody, if they're gonna go 10 day with a bunch of different players. So going forward, this could be a whole new list. Like next week, we have a bunch of new players in 2 weeks. But yeah, just going forward, just wins the lessons, guys. Wins and lessons.
Yeah. What I do like to see is that the younger guys that you've kind of invested in and banked on, they are moving up and up on this list. And obviously, Scottie, RJ, and IQ are at the top of this list right now in terms of your power rankings. And Grady Dick slowly climbing his way up there. And then if eventually, once Ochai gets more acclimated and he's playing more, if he starts bumping up on this list, and then you're going to be like, okay, the vision is doing its thing. We're kind of seeing it working how you want it to. The young guys are kind of becoming the main contributors and impactors on this team. Yes, you're still going to have a guy like Kelly Olynyk involved, Jakob Poeltl, and maybe some of these other like vet presences. Maybe they still get their shine. But seeing those young guys kind of take over, we talked about this with Cody. I like the idea of giving these guys added responsibility. Giving more and putting more on their plate. So the more you see that kind of affected in the power rankings, I think the more the vision gets clear. So I think that's a good way to kind of look at it and have that perspective of the wins and lessons mode. But that pretty much wraps it up for our conversation on the power rankings. We're going to move it on now to betting ahead.
All right, welcome back to Betting Ahead, powered by FanDuel. So last week, the Raptors had the Pelicans, the Hornets, the Rockets, and the Cavs. So I said the way the team has been playing was pretty up and down, pretty volatile, but I would take the Toronto money line against the Hornets and the Rockets. And how did that go? Our luck finally seems to be turning around, and we caught the W. I'll give myself a pizza party for that. So moving on to this week, we got the Spurs, the Pacers, the Nets, and the Hawks. I feel confident that Toronto is starting to figure out the basics of this new team, but not confident enough that they'll stroll through this week. So I would take the money line on the Spurs and the Nets. I think the Pacers offense will be too much for the Raptors, and for some reason the Hawks seem to have a vendetta against Toronto. But That's what I would do with the money line situation. Now, let's get to our 10K 10 week challenge. So last week, the legs I said to do against the Pelicans were RJ 20 plus points, Scottie 15 plus points, Quickly 4 plus assists, and other legs you could consider is Scottie 1-3, Quickly 1-3, Quickly 15 plus points. Again, the injury bug has plagued us with RJ being out, but technically we did win as Scottie did hit, Quickly did hit, and they both had at least 1-3. So I'll take what I can get. Moving on to this week, I would choose the Pacers games. They don't have a lot of defense, but the Raptors will have to score to keep up, and that's good for betting. So I would do these legs right here. RJ 20 plus points, Scottie 15 plus points, Quickly 2 threes. Other legs you could do is Jakob 6 plus rebounds, Scottie 4 plus assists, and Quickly 4 plus assists. And there you have it. This was Betting Ahead, powered by FanDuel.
All right, thank you, Kyle. And that does it for us. We want to thank anyone who followed along. Hope you're caught up on all things Raptors. Now, if you like this and want more content from Raptors Republic, check out the description or go to raptorsrepublic.com. Find more details there. And we want to thank Cody Wallace for joining us as our first guest on Run It Back. It was an awesome conversation. We hope you liked it. And like always, let us know what you think. Did you like the chemistry? Did you like what we talk about? Did you have any other things that you wanted to mention about the Raptors week, the trade deadline? What were your reactions to it? And in terms of everything that went on, what do you think the rotation is going to be like moving forward? Do you have any predictions? Let us know. But like always, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your feedback. We're always learning and trying to get better. So with that being said, I'm Zulfi Sheikh, joined by Kyle Ramnarine on the Raptors Republic Network. And we'll see you next week when we run it back.